My name is Maya, and I am 30 years last year. My parents called me on a Tuesday evening to tell me something that finally explained every single thing about my childhood. My sister was in financial trouble. They needed me to help. Not because they had suddenly remembered I existed. Not because they had spent 30 years building the kind of relationship where asking felt natural. But because Victoria needed something and I was the only option left. We know we haven't always been fair, my mother said. The understatement of 3 decades delivered in the careful voice of someone who has rehearsed it. But she's your sister. And family helps family. Family helps family. I sat with the phone in my hand and thought about every time family had helped me. I was still thinking when I hung up. Let me tell you about growing up as the invisible child. Not the scapegoat. That would have required my parents to direct energy toward me, even negative energy. The invisible child is different. The invisible child is simply the one who exists in the background of the story, necessary for certain domestic functions, unremarkable in the spaces between. My sister Victoria was 4 years older than me. She was beautiful in the way that gets noticed, the kind of beauty that opens doors before you even knock, that makes adults turn and smile, that photographs well and presents well and generally makes the world arrange itself more conveniently. I was not unattractive. I was simply not Victoria, which in our house was a significant deficit. My parents had not set out to favor her. I want to be clear about that because the story is more complicated than a villain. They were not cruel people. They were simply people who had fallen in love with their first child in the particular all-consuming way of new parents, and when I arrived 4 years later they had not less love exactly, but different love. Quieter love. The love of people who already knew how to do this, and therefore found it less astonishing. Victoria's achievements were astonishing. Mine were expected. I understood the difference very early. At 7 I won a spelling competition at school, the regional one, a genuine achievement, something I had worked toward for months with a quiet, determined focus that would become my defining characteristic as an adult. I came home with the certificate and my parents were pleased. Genuinely pleased. Victoria had won the same competition 4 years earlier. The celebration for hers had included a dinner out and a photograph on the refrigerator that stayed there for 2 years. Mine got a "well done, sweetheart," and the certificate filed in a drawer. I noticed. I didn't say anything. I was 7. Filing things away was already a skill. At 14, I got into a competitive summer program, art and design, something I had applied for secretly, half expecting rejection and genuinely shocked by the acceptance. I brought the letter home. My mother read it carefully. "That's wonderful," she said. "Though it's the same summer as Victoria's internship preparation. We'll have to see about logistics." The logistics were never resolved in my favor. I didn't go to the program. Victoria's internship preparation happened as planned. I filed that away too. By the time I left for university at 18, I had built, without fully realizing I was building it, a complete internal filing system for the ways in which I had been consistently, quietly, placed second. Not filed with bitterness, filed with the flat pragmatism of someone who has accepted a condition of their existence and decided to work around it rather than against it. I had stopped expecting to be seen. And I had become, in the absence of any external confirmation that I was worth seeing, very good at seeing myself. That was the gift of it. The only gift of it. I had learned, from necessity, to be my own witness. The phone call came on a Tuesday. Victoria had made a series of financial decisions, impulsive, poorly researched, the decisions of someone who had spent 30 years being protected from the consequences of her choices, and had therefore never developed the instinct for consequence. A business venture that had failed. Debt that had accumulated. The particular crisis of someone who had always had a safety net discovering that the net had limits. My parents had already given what they could. Now they were calling me. "We know we haven't always been fair," my mother said. That sentence. In 30 years it was the closest she had come to saying what we both knew was true. But she's your sister. And family helps family. I looked around my apartment, the apartment I had paid for myself, furnished myself, built myself from the ground up with the money I had earned in the career I had constructed entirely without the networking contacts and financial support that had been available to Victoria and directed elsewhere. I thought about the spelling competition, the summer program, the 47 other things in my filing system. I'll think about it, I said. Maya. I said I'll think about it, I said. That's what I have right now. I hung up. And for the first time in 30 years, I didn't file anything away. I let it sit right there in the middle of the room. Visible. Real. Mine to decide what to do with. I called my best friend Rachel that night. Not to process. I had been processing quietly and alone for 30 years, and I was tired of it. To say things out loud to someone who would hear them without managing them. Rachel had known me for 12 years. Had heard pieces of the story over those years, individual incidents, individual moments of the filing system opened briefly and then closed again. She had never heard the whole thing. I told her the whole thing. The spelling competition. The summer program. The university years when Victoria's accommodation had been paid in full while I had worked part-time to cover the gap between my scholarship and my actual costs. The graduation where my parents had been present but distracted. Victoria had just been offered a position at a company they were excited about, and the conversation at my graduation dinner had been primarily about her next chapter. My graduation dinner. Rachel listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "How long have you known all of this?" "Always," I said. "I just didn't let myself say it in one place before." "Why no?" I thought about it. "Because they called me for help," I said. And the thing that made me angriest wasn't being asked. It was they said they knew it hadn't been fair. Past tense. Like it was finished. Like saying it out loud made it resolved. "It's not resolved," Rachel said. "No," I said. "It's not. What do you want to do?" I had been asking myself that question since I hung up the phone. Not what was right. Not what family required. What I, Maya, actually wanted. The answer was complicated. Part of me wanted to say no cleanly, finally, the word I had spent 30 years not saying to my family. No to being the backup option. No to being called upon when convenient and overlooked when not. No to family helps family from people who had defined family in ways that consistently excluded me. Part of me wanted something else. Not the money, I could afford to help, that wasn't the issue. But something that felt impossible and necessary simultaneously. I wanted them to know. Not to punish them. Not to extract an apology I wasn't sure they were capable of giving. But because 30 years of filing things away had left me, not broken, I was not broken. I had built something real and substantial from the silence, but incomplete. Carrying a weight that was not mine to carry alone. I wanted to put it down. And putting it down required saying it out loud. To them. "I'm going to call them back," I said to Rachel. But not to talk about Victoria. My therapist, Dr. Sarah, had been seeing me for 2 years. I called her the next morning between sessions, which I rarely did, but this felt urgent in the way that things feel urgent when they have been waiting for 30 years and have finally stopped waiting. "Tell me what's happening," she said. I told her about the call. About Rachel. About the decision forming in me, not yet fully formed, still taking shape, but present. "What does the decision feel like?" Dr. Sarah said. "Like standing at the edge of something," I said. "I don't know if it's a cliff or a doorway." "What would make it a doorway?" I thought about it. "If they hear me," I said. "Actually hear me. Not manage me. Not redirect to Victoria. Not make it about keeping the peace. And if they don't hear you? Then I have my answer," I said. "About what this family is and what it isn't. And I can stop carrying hope I shouldn't have." Dr. Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Either outcome gives you something," she said. "Yes," I said. "That's why I'm going to do it." I called my parents on a Thursday evening. Both of them. I asked my mother to put it on speaker, to have my father there. This was not a conversation I was willing to have twice. "Maya," my mother said when she answered. Slightly wary, she had sensed something in my voice, or perhaps in the 4 days of silence since my "I'll think about it." "I want to talk," I said. "Not about Victoria's situation. About something else." and I need you both to listen without interrupting. A pause. Okay, my father said. His voice, quiet, careful, the voice of a man who had spent 30 years occupying the peripheral space of the family my mother and Victoria had primarily inhabited. I talked for 20 minutes. Not everything, 30 years of filing cannot be fully emptied in 20 minutes. But the shape of it, the spelling competition, the summer program, the graduation dinner, the pattern consistent, cumulative, so habitual that I understood they had probably stopped seeing it the way you stop seeing furniture you pass every day. I told them what it had felt like. Not dramatically. Not with the performed emotion of someone who wants to be seen to be suffering. Just plainly. The way you describe something that happened. When I finished, the line was very quiet. My mother spoke first. Maya, I'm not finished, I said. She stopped. I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty, I said. I'm telling you because you called me and said you knew it hadn't been fair. And I need you to understand what not fair actually looked like. Not in the abstract. Specifically. Silence. I hear you, my father said. Just that. 3 words. From the man who had spent 30 years in the peripheral space. But something in his voice, something that told me he had also been filing things away. Different things. His own things. Thank you, I said. My father called me the next morning. Not my mother, my father. Solo call. Unprecedented. He said, "Can I come and see you? Just me. This weekend." I said yes. He drove 3 hours on a Saturday. Arrived with nothing, no flowers purchased hastily, no wine, no offering that would make the visit about the gift rather than the conversation. Just himself. Which was, I understood, the point. We sat in my kitchen. I made coffee. The ritual of it. Something to do with our hands while we navigated what we were about to do. I owe you an apology, he said. Specifically. Not generally. I waited. The summer program, he said. I knew about it. Your mother told me you'd been accepted and that the logistics were difficult and he stopped. I didn't push. I told myself it was complicated and I didn't push. I sat with that. Why not? I said. He looked at his coffee. Because pushing would have meant a conversation I wasn't ready for, he said. About the pattern. About what was happening with Victoria and what wasn't happening with you. And another stop. I chose the easier thing. For a long time I chose the easier thing. Yes, I said. You did. I'm sorry, he said. Plainly. Without the careful management of my mother's version. Just the words, direct and real. I looked at my father, this quiet man who had inhabited the edges of our family, who had loved me in the particular muted way of someone who had never learned to make their love loud enough to compete with the room. I know you love me, I said. That was never the question. The question was whether you would show up when it cost something. He nodded. I didn't, he said. For a long time I didn't. Are you showing up now? He looked at me directly. Yes, he said. If you'll let me. I thought about it honestly. I'll let you, I said. But I needed to be consistent. Not just when Victoria is in crisis and I'm needed. Consistent. Consistent, he repeated. The word of a man making a promise he understands the weight of. We talked for 4 hours. Not about Victoria. About us, about the 30 years of peripheral space and what it had looked like from his side, the particular failure of a man who had told himself that staying out of it was staying neutral when really it was just staying comfortable. About what he wanted now. I want to know you, he said. The adult version of you. Not the filing system version. The actual you. That will take time, I said. I know, he said. I have time. He drove home in the late afternoon. I stood at my window and watched his car until it turned the corner. And felt something I had not expected. Not forgiveness, not yet, not fully, that was a longer road. But something that was moving in that direction. The tentative opening of something that had been closed. Not for him. For me. Because carrying 30 years of locked doors was heavier than I had admitted. And one door, opened carefully, with evidence required, was lighter than I had expected. My sister called in October. Not my parents relaying a message, Victoria herself. which was itself significant. Victoria and I had existed in the same family our entire lives with the polite distance of people who share a history but not a relationship. We were not enemies. We were simply strangers who knew each other's backstory. She called on a Sunday evening. "Mom told me you talked to them," she said. "About the pattern." "Yes," I said. "Can I ask you something?" "Yes," I said. "Did you hate me?" she said. "Growing up. Did you hate me for forgetting what I got?" I thought about it honestly. "No," I said. "I loved you. I was jealous of you. Those aren't the same thing." She was quiet for a moment. "I didn't know," she said. "About the summer program. I didn't know you didn't go because of my internship prep." "I know you didn't," I said. "You weren't told. That wasn't your fault." "It feels like my fault," she said. "It wasn't," I said. "You were a child too. You didn't design the dynamic. You just lived inside it." "So did you," she said. "Yes," I said. "But from a different side." She was quiet again. "Maya," she said finally. "The financial thing, I'm not calling about that. I want you to know that. I'm not calling to ask for help." "Okay," I said. "I'm calling because," she stopped. Started again. "I'm calling because I've been thinking about what Mom said you said. About being the invisible child. And I've been thinking about all the ways I was visible. All the things I got. And her voice was not entirely steady. "I don't want us to be strangers anymore. If that's possible." I sat with that. 30 years of parallel existence. Two sisters who had shared a childhood and not shared a relationship because the childhood had been arranged in a way that made genuine closeness difficult. "It's possible," I said. "But it has to be honest. I'm not interested in performing sisterhood. If we do this, it has to be real." "Real," she said. "Yes. Real." "And Victoria." "Yes." "I'm not your safety net," I said. "I love you. But I'm not available to be called upon when things go wrong and set aside when they don't. That's not a relationship. That's a resource." "I know," she said. I know that. I'm working on understanding how I got here. Why I never learned to manage things myself." She paused. "I have a therapist now." "Good," I said. "She says I have a lot of unexamined assumptions," Victoria said. "About what I deserve. About what other people owe me." "That sounds right," I said. She almost laughed. "I deserve that," she said. "Yes," I said. "You do." We talked for an hour. Imperfectly. With the awkward sincerity of two people learning a language they had never been taught. But honestly. And at the end she said, "Thank you for picking up." "Of course," I said. Because of course was what I was learning to mean, not the automatic compliance of someone who had been trained to be available. The genuine choice of someone who had decided, on her own terms, to try. 1 year later. My father calls every Wednesday. Not because I asked him to, because he decided to. Because consistent was the word he had taken from our kitchen conversation and had apparently meant. The calls are not long. They are not always easy. We are learning each other, the adult versions, and learning takes time and produces awkward moments alongside the genuine ones. But they happen. Every Wednesday. Without exception. That means something. After 30 years of peripheral space, it means something. My mother took longer. That was the honest truth of it. My mother and I had a more complicated accounting. She had been the one who shaped the dynamic, who had loved Victoria with the all-consuming love of first parenthood, and had given me the quieter love and had never fully examined the difference. Examining it, I understood, required her to see herself in a way that was genuinely painful. She came to see me in November. Sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where my father had sat 3 months earlier. Looked at the life I had built. At the apartment furnished with the careful attention of someone who had learned to create home for herself, because home had not always been given. "You did all of this yourself," she said. "Yes," I said. "I didn't help," she said. "No," I said. "You didn't." She looked at her hands. "I want to tell you something," she said. "Not as an excuse. As information." "Okay," I said. "When you were born," she said, "I was overwhelmed. Victoria was 4 and demanding, and I was exhausted, and you were such a quiet baby. You didn't need me the way she did. And she stopped. I let you not need me. I told myself you were independent. I didn't ask myself whether you had learned to not need me, because needing me didn't get you very far. The kitchen was very quiet. It didn't, I said softly, get me very far. I know, she said. I'm sorry. We sat together for a long time. Not resolving 30 years in an afternoon, that was not possible, and I had stopped expecting impossible things. But present. Honest. 2 women sitting in the truth together for the first time. I want to try, she said. So do I said. On my terms. Your terms, she said. Like the words were new in her mouth. Like saying them required something from her. Yes, I said. My terms. Not Victoria's convenience. Not family helps family when family means I give and receive nothing. My terms, I show up when I choose to, I set limits when I need to, and what I offer is given freely, not extracted. She nodded slowly. Okay, she said. And Mom? Yes. I'm not going to help Victoria financially, I said. Not because I can't. Because it would be participating in the same pattern. She needs to learn that choices have consequences. That's not something I can learn for her. My mother looked at the table. I know, she said finally. I know you're right. Victoria and I have lunch every other month. It is imperfect and sometimes awkward and occasionally genuinely warm. We are building something we never had, a real relationship, not the performed version of sisterhood, but the actual thing, made from honest conversation and the willingness to keep showing up. She is in therapy, working through things. Slower than I would like sometimes, but working. She paid back the first installment of what she owed, not to me, to the people she had borrowed from. Small, but real. Evidence of someone beginning to understand consequence. I noticed. I told her I noticed. Thank you, she said. Keep going, I said. I started teaching. A design class at a community center, evenings, twice a week, the particular satisfaction of passing something on to people who are just beginning to understand what they can make with their hands and their eyes. One of my students, 17, quiet, the kind of quiet that recognizes itself in others, showed me a drawing at the end of the 3rd class. Careful, detailed, something she had made from a feeling rather than a reference. She held it out with the specific tentative hope of someone who has made something real and is not yet sure if the world will see it. I looked at it for a long time. This is extraordinary, I said. She looked at me like she wasn't sure whether to believe it. It is, I said. Keep making things. Don't let anyone put this away. She nodded. I thought about the spelling competition, the summer program, the 47 other things in my filing system. I thought about the girl who had learned to be her own witness because nobody else was watching. She had turned out all right. More than all right. She had turned out exactly as much as she was supposed to be. I want to say something to you. If you grew up as the invisible child, not the favorite, not the difficult one, just the one who existed quietly in the background while someone else occupied the center, I want you to hear this. Your quietness was not your smallness. Your independence was not your abandonment. The things you built alone, the filing system, the self-witnessing, the career and the apartment and the life constructed without the net, those things are not the consolation prize. They're the thing. The actual thing. You learned, from necessity, to see yourself clearly. To be your own witness. To build without waiting for permission or acknowledgement or the confirmation that someone was watching. That is not a wound. That is a skill. The most important skill. And now that you have said the true things, now that the filing system is open and the weight is shared and the people who should have seen you are finally trying to look, you get to decide what to do with all of it. You get to decide who gets access to you. On your terms. Not theirs. Not the terms of the family dynamic you were born into. Your terms. The terms of someone who built something real from silence and is no longer willing to be invisible. You were always worth seeing. You just had to wait for the right people to look. Some of those people were always there. Some of them are learning. And some of them, The most important ones are you. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Were you the invisible child in your family? Share your story in the comments. I read every single one. Tell me where you are watching from. I love knowing how far these stories reach. Until next time, you are always worth seeing. Never forget that.